as bad as things are for Donald Trump this week, they are worse for Republicans all across the country, because the Ted Cruzes of the world and the Greg Abbotts of the world and the Ron DeSantises of the world know that their only solution to the problem they find themselves in right now, which is just a cascade of the Delta variant through all these states, is to choose the path chosen. Oh my gosh, Luis Sayat Jr. He said happy birthday to Johnny. Half of that goes to you. That's fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Johnny. That's Luis. Thank you so much for that super chat. That's so sweet. Look, and Johnny's look at him, genuinely touched. I know Johnny. Unlike Devin, I know Johnny's genuine emotions.
Poor Devin.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank
you, Josh.
Hard.
If Trump still owes Russian money, could that be why they've been hacking us? That's an interesting question. They've been hacking us. No, they've been hacking us all along. It's just during the Trump years you heard less about it because the DOJ didn't make. There was no pushback. They were basically letting it slide. And when the Sysahead started worrying about it, they started clamoring for dropping him. And then when he turned against the election fraud claims, that's when they jettisoned him. So, the fascinating part of, when Trump, his interview with Woodward came out, he bragged about downplaying the information on the virus. And for a couple of reasons. One, he was trying to get his trade deal through with China, right? Where they were going to buy a lot of stuff. They were going to buy a lot of stuff, guys. $30 billion. Phase one, $30 billion of American goods. By the way, all consumables, not cars, not building materials, electronics, none of that. No. Just beef, pork, soybeans, and corn. That's it. Because, as I've told you guys many times, having spent a good deal of time in China leading up, in the 2 years leading up to COVID, having been there, and I am currently in a soul-searching mode about how to express what my real experience was clearly, so that people understand that I'm not against the Chinese people, but what I saw while I was there was a clearly manipulative environment. And no surprise. I mean, I literally had a meeting with the propaganda department to film there. They literally, we sat across the table from, and the most scared I've ever felt for a person that I currently wasn't doing CPR on was the translator for the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda minister, who we had the meeting with. Because if she screws up a word, she's in deep. Now, luckily, I don't know how aware they were that I spoke Chinese or how good my Chinese was. So I was able to understand what they were saying. And I could see that she was struggling to try and explain to us what they meant, versus what they were saying. Yeah. Anyways, across the country, they culled 700 million pigs in 2018 and 19 because of a disease. There's massive flooding going on in China right now. The Three Gorges Dam, there's rumors that it's already broken through, but it is not in good shape regardless. Other reservoirs they filled to capacity, and they never let the pressure off by releasing some of the water. So now they are breaking and drowning entire villages. It's horrifying. You've seen some of the flooding in Mexico, some of the flooding in Germany, which is catching people off guard, the climate change related stuff. There is 10, if not 20 times that amount of stuff going on in China right now. And because of that, not only are villages and areas being flooded, but so are farms. And so the already difficult food shortages they were facing have been exacerbated by the flooding. It's terrifying. And they need all the food they can buy. And we are one of their biggest sources. And even still, with Donald Trump playing, with Xi saying, oh, they're being totally transparent. They got it under control. It's not a problem. It's not. You have nothing to worry about. I've talked to them. They're handling it very professionally. Professionally was the term, by the way, that Trump constantly used instead of public servants, which do it for a salary. Professionals will only do it if there's a bonus involved, I guess, is the idea. So they're handling it. The communists are handling it very professionally, which is amazing if you think about it.
Kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. But the reason he was downplaying is that he wanted this trade deal where they were going to buy $30 billion worth of stuff. Well, they didn't. They bought about $13 billion, even with the food shortages they've had. And they bought the biggest orders of beef, corn, soybeans, and pork in our nation's history because they didn't buy them for 4 months because we shut down, trade routes for a while. And then they bought all of it to catch up, right? So Trump was patting himself on the back in July last year because they had all of a sudden bought all this food. Right at the time Americans were in food lines, we were allegedly, according to Donald Trump, selling all of our pork, corn, and soybeans and beef, the most amount of it that we've ever sold, to China, who, by his assertion, attacked us with a bioweapon, which in the Chamberlains of Chamberlain in history, there was never a moment where Chamberlain said, why don't we just let, if Hitler wants to take Poland, that's their business. But they're going to be hungry when they get there. So I think England should sell them all of our beef, corn, pork, and soybeans, right? It's ridiculous, right? And Trump was, bragging about this point. We are still, in a situation where they are in desperate need for food, desperately all last year, we're desperate for food, and still only lived up to a third of the trade deal he made with them, which was supposed to have 3 phases. There was never a second and third phase. The first phase itself standardized a little bit of stuff, but we had a $250 billion, a $500 billion trade deficit, half of which is Walmart. $250 billion of it is Walmart. The other 250 is spread over like drop shipping stuff on Amazon and assembled stuff. It's crazy. In that whole, he was bragging that he was going to make a $30 billion dent in this $500 billion trade deficit, and he still only made 13. Even as much food as they needed, even as desperate as things were. And now it's worse. The Chinese people are in desperate shape right now, and the CCP is not doing a lot of. They're not being the solution in any means. And a lot of the problem that they're having is infrastructure. Their infrastructure is breaking down. And you know why their infrastructure is breaking down? Lack of regulations. Lack of a proper permitting process. Lack of inspectors. All the stuff
Sounds
that
like a
Republicans
pure
rail
libertarian society.
Yep, it's a libertarian paradise, in terms of building over there. You want to put up a building in China right now? You don't even have to finish the plans. You can start building and change the plans on a skyscraper floor by floor as you go. Now, if you want to see what that libertarian paradise looks like right now, go Google during the break. We're about to come up on the news after you listen to our sponsors, of course, and help them out. Go look on YouTube or some other site and at tilting buildings in China, shaking skyscrapers, ghost cities that are falling apart. That's what libertarian lack of regulations does. Smart regulations are valuable. Just getting rid of them because of expeditious desire to just keep building willy-nilly just to pat yourself on the back that look at that pretty thing. That's what gives you the horrors that you're seeing over there right now. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to, the infrastructure problems that China is having right now and that the Republicans wish on the United States. Understand that. That's what they want for the United States. Is happening in the medical area right now with the cascade of the Delta variant across the country. news about that when we come back. In terms of Trump's kind of issues with border states,
Illegal, yeah, look.
you've heard a lot. Yes.
Free health care for illegal, yeah, look.
So the big concern was Texas and all these states are going to have to provide free health care for immigrants coming across the border. We're at an all-time high. There's never been this many people, and we're all going to give them free health care and free school and all this kind of stuff. And you now have Democratic members of Congress in border states saying, you know what would be great is if you guys would show the footage of the people being deported. Because, and these are, Hispanic and Latino members of the House and Senate going, because all you're seeing is, from their perspective, all you're seeing is the people who are coming in. All you're seeing is the influx. You're not seeing the number of people who are being turned away and why, right? And the reasoning behind it and all that kind of stuff. So it is it's fascinating to watch, what most people would refer to, I think, as a backlash to something that's going on, right? Quite frankly, is often a lot closer to simply the trickle down to the average person of an idea. So what a lot of, whenever you see backlash to something in the press, it's usually a delay to when it gets to the majority of people. Most extreme ideas, or things that seem extreme or are too new to really catch on or aren't easily explained, when they have a backlash, it's usually because the first group who's early adopters, the people who stand in line for iPhones and the like, who are like, yeah, totally, I get this, I feel it, I see what you're saying, and I'm so into it, I can look past any of the negative parts of it, I can look past any of the downsides, I can even have blinders on because it seems to satisfy a goal that I'm looking for, where I may not see the other problems with it that the average person might lock onto because they're not barreling in on solving the issue that I think is the most important issue in the world, right? So the activist class will present an idea that's a solution to something, wherever they are on the spectrum, doesn't matter. This happens a lot. And by the time their solution, which they go, that sounds great, let's do that, and they rush ahead with it, by the time it gets to the general public starts going, whoa, you want to do what now? Well, what about this and this and this? That sounds ridiculous. Yeah, yes, in a utopian environment, perhaps that would work. But it obviously won't. So can we wait for a second? Wait. Let's think about this. Let's discuss this. And then that's when the activist class goes, but we don't have to discuss it. It's already there. So, and this isn't like left or right. This is how people who are, caught up in the activist class, think about things. And they often won't feel like people are attacking the idea or attacking the solution they presented, when in reality they're just not all in on it because they don't see past the flaws the way the people who presented it do, right? So when you see mask mandates and the like starting to come online, or the presentation of a vaccine, for example, everybody who knows this is the solution and is on board already and is going, I can't wait for there to be a vaccine so we can go back to life as normal. There's a big group of people on the other side who will be going, I would never take a vaccine. Things are normal already. And that's what we're seeing as sort of a crisscross of in the backlash in very seldom states. So when you got a mass of people that are not the majority of the people in the United States, but are an abundant number who are finally sort of catching on to the common sense part. There's this crisscross of the, hurry up and get vaccinated, but I don't trust Donald Trump. And I trust anything Donald Trump does, but I'm never going to take the vaccine, even though I'm going to give him credit for making it. That crowd is a very strange group. And they're about 80-20 Republican to Democrat or independent or what have you, or Robert F. Kennedy, Marianne Williamson follower, depending on what you want to call the 20%. For real. And so what they'll do is, there's a lot of people who are, they're vaccine hesitant. They have questions about, okay, they're not vaccine hesitant. There's a 20% that are vaccine hesitant of the people who are not getting vaccinated. 80% of the people who are not getting vaccinated are at this point not even anti-vax. They're anti-this vax. And there's a myriad of reasons why they are anti-this vax. All of them are lunacy, but they are anti this particular one. They are largely Trump supporters who, again, think he created it, want to give him credit for Operation Fart Steed.
Captain's log.
But they think he's everything that, the sun shines out of his backside. He can solve anything. Only he can solve it. They bought that in line. He's the smartest guy ever with the best people. He brings everybody together. He makes the best deals. And yet, got rid of the pandemic response team 2 years before we were hit by a big pandemic, which anybody could have seen coming as a regular order of business. At some point in the future, you would want those people just kind of on watch, even if you don't use them that often. And he got rid of them, and he got rid of the cops program, which was helping to weed out bad cops, which probably would have saved George Floyd's life, or at least taken Derek Chauvin out of the equation in that circumstance. And George Floyd would have gotten the medical help he needed earlier in that process without Derek Chauvin basically running interference on that process. And so even though they totally believe Trump is the greatest president ever, and even though they want to give him credit for coming up with the vaccine, and even though they think Operation Fart Steed was the greatest medical miracle, called it a medical miracle. They literally used the phrase medical miracle about the creation of the vaccines. They won't let that anywhere near their body for a cascading number of reasons. Number one being it's not FDA approved yet, even though the whole idea was emergency approval because, and millions of people have taken it. You've had 125,000 breakthrough infections in 164 million vaccinations. That's less than 0.08% breakthrough infections. And there's a lot of variety in there because some people got it within 2 weeks of getting their second dose, for example, before full immunity had happened. Some of them got in between. Some of them got it with Johnson & Johnson that first 2 weeks after their first dose. Other people have other immunological difficulties in their bodies that have, contribute to the fact that they won't produce antibodies as well from the vaccine. So it's not the vaccine that didn't work, it's that this person is in a special subcategory where it might not be as effective in their system. And there's, again, hundreds upon hundreds of reasons why a breakthrough infection would happen. And none of them point to a major breakdown in any respect of the vaccines working against any variant, including the Delta variant, right? But where it is breaking through is in Republican areas where they are not getting vaccinated. Los Angeles has, in an area that has 10 million people in it, including the Valley, 4 million people who have not been vaccinated. And by the way, that's the voting makeup. LA is always going to go, Democrat largely, when, as far as the races go. They are going to vote for the Democrat that's coming into office. However, it's not 80-20. It's not 60, it's closer to 60-40. And that 40% of that 10 million aren't vaccinated because that's all that's left of the Republican Party. What'd you say, Johnny?
So Lisa was going to work, so I was saying bye to
Oh,
her.
I see. I got you. I thought I heard, like, your mouth moved and I didn't hear anything. I was like, oh no, the mic is gone.
Oh no, the audio's on again. Sorry about that.
Right. So right now, the biggest hotspots, and there are very dense areas in more ways than one that are being hit by the Delta variant, and which is the rising case. By the way, the Alpha variant and the original, the wild variant, all three of those are still out there to get the unvaccinated. The Delta variant is really the only one showing up in these, breakthrough infections, largely because it's spreading faster than the other ones, and it's among people who are more slapdash and haphazard with their mask usage and the like. So, right now, obviously, you're going to see, and I'll put a map up so that people can see it in the chat room on here. This is the current share of Delta people vulnerable to infection with the Delta variant, and it has a lot to do with the vaccine numbers there. But you are not just seeing heavily red states affected by it. You're seeing high population areas in blue states that have a 60-40 Republican, a Democrat to Republican balance, where you still have a significant number of Republicans or people who identify as Republicans or Trumplicans or maggots out there, and they're spreading it to their family and friends who don't think it's a big deal. So you got the people who don't think it's a big deal getting hit by the people who actually think it's a plandemic, who are the biggest Trump supporters who go to these super spreader events, who just went and saw Lee Greenwood in Branson and brought it back with them and spread it through an area of people who are going, I'm young, I'm healthy, it's not a big deal. And they are killing Republicans.
Yup.
100% of the deaths right now, 99.99% of the people dying with COVID in their system from COVID are unvaccinated Trump supporters. Full on, just loud and proud about it. Because they're the most slapdash with their wearing of masks in the first place. They took little or no precautions anyways. The precautions that were taken were the ones taken around them by other people. They're living off the vaccination rolls of the other people around them, did not carry it to them. Well, the Delta variant doesn't care. Apparently, you're not going to get sick from it very much, if you do get it when you've been vaccinated, but you can carry a 1,000 times more viral load of it than the other variants. 1,000 times. Which means you can infect people. And you're going to infect people who won't get vaccinated, and you also are going to infect people who can't be vaccinated. Namely, younger people who this is affecting greatly.
Yeah.
And under 12 years old, it's a really scary time for parents right now. My son is 10 years old, and it will be probably October before he can be vaccinated. And it's, my biggest fear is bringing it home to him and it having some, long haul effect on him. And the just total lack of regard for that on the Republican side right now for their own folks just points to the kind of Darwinist passive eugenics of the modern Republican Party. We'll be back right after this. It's a House Parks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. So, this is from the Dallas News. The Delta COVID-19 variant is spreading fast. How worried should we be? The most important thing people can do to protect themselves against the new strain is to get vaccinated, experts say. The Delta variant of COVID-19 has quickly become the dominant strain of coronavirus in the United States. It's leading to sudden changes in health recommendations as well as big increases in case counts nationwide. The mutation, which is more contagious and may cause more severe illnesses, has prompted changes in mask recommendations and advice for vaccinated people at local and federal levels. Meanwhile, Greg Abbott is literally ordering areas not to allow mask mandates. He is, and by the way, how is this not government elites not following common sense and telling the average person that they know better? All the stuff that they clamor about DC and to no end. Republicans have made a career since Reagan of crapping on government, while, by the way, being in government. And it's always been an odd dichotomy that we like on the show to explain as government can't do anything right, elect me and I'll prove it, as the main way that Republicans run for office. And yet there's this idea that DC is this out of touch area, that it might as well be in Belgium, right underneath the UN, in the basement of the UN. It's full of globalist elites who want to, take power away from the states, and and yet, when it comes down to the voting on, say, the infrastructure bill this week, which there was a wonderful change in terms of the Senate. We were bringing this up over the last couple months, that basically the number of Republicans who are for the infrastructure bill is over 65% of voters, of Republican voters, and yet only 17 out of 50 Republicans voted for it. And by the way, only to advance it as far as debate. That doesn't mean all 17 of them are going to vote for the final bill. But, I mean, it's a huge step forward. But still, you've got less than that 65%. So, and yet, with Democrats, it's, 85%. And the other 15%, the only reason they're against it is because they want it to be bigger. They're not against the bill. They just think it could go further. So every Democrat is voting to push the bill with the idea that this is a good baseline. And again, infrastructure bank people, please understand what that means if that gets passed. So the Republicans seem to be, by their own description, the people who are out of sync with the voters and living this elite DC lifestyle where they can go up there, take a check from their constituents and the American people, and not do the work. They're not voting for the stuff that 65% of their voters want. And so, as that's played out, it's, it kind of eats away at that talking point. I mean, we've been watching a lot of talking points die over the last few months. And none harder, I suppose maybe lumber, but none harder than this one about masks and vaccinations. Because now, as the Delta variant is spreading and it is clearly taking lives unique to a particular group of people, it is at this point uniquely killing Trump supporters. It is, the people who are, and the people who are getting sick from it, ancillary sickness from it, who aren't vaccinated, also largely Trump supporters. Just by volume, or people they came into contact with, so people that they effectively are killing or physically damaging with their choices. That in and of itself is, shows a certain level of awareness that seems to be creeping back to reality on the Republican side of the aisle. Watching it play out, watching the people sort of panic getting the vaccine now. The difference is that I have Pfizer, you got Moderna.
I got
right?
Moderna.
Yeah. If you're doing the two-dose version so far anyways, and again, this is, we are jumping onto a moving train here. We are running to catch up to something that is actively happening. So both the science and the experience of how to deal with it as far as our own social lives, like hand sanitizer and wearing masks and where we go and what we do and what's an acceptable risk and all that kind of stuff, is a constantly fluctuating thing over the last year, because reality is a constantly fluctuating thing. So as we watch this play out and we're dealing with the growth of this Delta variant, and a lot of us are like, all right, I don't really fear for my own life because I've been vaccinated. I know what the death rates are, but I'm not willing to kill Republican holdouts just for being stupid. I don't think being stupid or belligerent or just a straight up jagoff is a reason. It's not a capital offense. And it's certainly not a reason for me to give it to them with my lackadaisical behavior, because I'm not worried for my own safety. To give it to somebody who isn't worried about their own safety at all enough to be vaccinated, who will then pass it on, even if it doesn't kill or harm them in any major way, to someone who it may. Like, how many steps am I okay with in this process?
Right.
3 members of their family before one dies? 2? And so I have a theory, and I'll wait until after the break to tell it, about what the new mask mandates in cities like Los Angeles and where I am in Las Vegas right now are all about. What are they really about? I'll tell you my theory after we come back. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back. So this is my theory, and I'm sticking to it. Here it comes.
Okay.
The reason why, there's a lot of reasons why Republicans might be changing their tune on this, and the primary reason a lot of people think, that they're changing their tune is because Republican voters are dying, right? That this is finally affecting them, and it's finally killing the ones with money. It was fine when it was killing the white trash in eastern Kentucky and some of the people they'd rather not have sleeping on their couch, and their sister's brother-in-law who was, a fentanyl addict anyways, and they were watching the death clock on this dude, so who really cares? You know what I mean? Like, that, when it wiped out those people, they're like, oh, well, you know what I mean? Nature is Darwinism, right? That's the nature doing its thing. But when it starts killing people who might have donated to their campaign, and the people it leaves behind, their widows and children, are not particularly friendly to the fact that these idiotic policies took their mother, their father, their, patriarch or matriarch of the family, then, it might be a little hard in 2022. So we might want to start telling people to start getting vaccinated, right? Well, the mask mandate thing that you're seeing in Los Angeles and other areas, like I said, Las Vegas, New York, and to some degree, they are not full-on mandates in a lot of places. They get a little water, especially here in Vegas. It's a little watery, although it is officially on the mandate. Nobody's enforcing it. I think it's sort of the inversion of that, the panic the Republicans are having right now, which is, oh my God, Delta's killing the keepers, the Republican keepers. So we got to get people to get vaccinated. Tell them to get vaccinated. We're not going to do the mask thing because we're never going to talk them into that. But get vaccinated quick, right? Whereas the Democratic side of things would argue that, the only people that are going to get killed, or by this, if there's a breakthrough infection from this Delta thing, might be these other Democrats, these, like, who are walking around. So just say, guys, it's a good idea to put your mask back on. All those people are going to do it. All the Democrats in the area, all the vaccinated people, all the people who believe in vaccines, all the people who want to get vaccinated but can't yet because of age, or they have kids at home, and their family members, they're not going to die because you give them a warning and you go, it's a good idea to wear masks. The holdouts are like, well, we can't talk you into saving your own life.
Yeah.
And most of the areas where you're seeing these, mask mandates, they also have helmet mandates for motorcyclists. And why do they have those? Do they have it because they care if you live or die? Really? I mean, they still let people drive 65 miles an hour on the freeway, even though they know 55 would save more lives. But, you balance that against life. And the same thing with motorcyclists. Do they really care if you bounce your cranium off the cement? Not really. The state and the insurance companies just don't want to pay to keep the rest of your body alive for a few years because you were stupid. They don't want to, keep, have a body on a ventilator that's basically, for all practical purposes, brain dead for years because you don't want to wear a helmet. So you can wear a helmet, so if you do have a crash and you kill yourself, it's probably because you broke your neck, not because you smashed your head, and so you're going to just die. You just go ahead and die. You're not, from the accident. Instead of, the rest of your body's kind of fine, but that little, one of the big helmet advocates, anti-helmet advocates, was at Sturgis in this area, kind of doing this anti-helmet thing. His bike tipped over. He wasn't even riding. They were sitting still. He fell over and hit his head on the curb and had to be kept alive artificially for like a month before they unplugged him. And so the cities will have, the cities where you see, helmet laws, you're going to see mask mandates for as long as they are necessary. Because, you're taking up a bed. Believe me, if COVID just kind of knocked you out of the, like the second you got it, you just dropped dead and they could just isolate parts of town, like outbreak, the approach would be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
It just would. They just go, well, I guess we got to park some trucks and not let anybody leave the area like the Walking Dead, right? But because you can carry it around, masks. And that mask is there to protect your family and friends, because the people who you're running into with the Delta variant don't care about you or your family. And if they do care about you or your family, but they were under the mistaken idea that while they're protected from it because they've been vaccinated, they can't carry it, which we now know they can. They might give it to you and you might carry it home. And again, you might be totally fine, but you might kill your kid, or you might kill a neighbor, or you might kill your friend, or you might take it to church. And we have been going through this thing for a year. Nobody wants to keep wearing masks forever.
No.
Everybody's over it, kids. We're all over it. But we need it to end so it can be over. We don't need to pretend it's over. The Republicans currently are kind of like that. That dude who ran the marathon? I'm sure you know about this guy, Johnny. Who, I don't know if he was trying to break a world record or he just wanted to finish. But
It's a rough picture.
20 feet from the line, he started to evacuate his bowels.
Yeah.
Remember that fella? Right.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
That's when your body thinks the race is over, but you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that really is where these guys, that's the Republican Party in my mind right now, is that guy, crap falling out of his shorts as he tries to cross the finish line, pretending he's a winner in that regard. When he could have just solved that problem earlier.
Yeah.
He could have taken precautions and solved that problem earlier. It's just part of life. It's going to eat some of your time out, but at least you won't go down in history forever as that piece of video guy.
Yeah.
And in the case of the Republicans in Texas and Idaho and South Dakota and Florida, which is particularly bad, this desperate desire to show people how tough they are by not wearing masks. I was vegan for about 3 years. I still do meatless Mondays. I am still, I mitigate the amount of meat I consume and that kind of stuff, and I'm aware of it and healthy about it, my choices. But I remember, when I was vegan, I didn't even proselytize about it. If I brought it up, my buddy Brian would immediately go into, nothing makes me want to have a steak more right now than you just talking about that. I'm just going to have a big old steak when I did. Like, those folks that if you bring up, you might want to have a salad. Like, yeah, salad made of steak. And that's their emotional response to it. That's where we are with the Republican Party and masks and vaccines right now. They are mentally 14, and their response to all of this is, "You're not my real dad. You can't tell me what to do," right? Which is, I don't know why they got stunted in like an 80s teen heartbreak comedy, but they did, and it would be embarrassing if it wasn't so
Deadly?
desperately sad. Yeah, it wasn't so deadly. It wasn't taking lives. And this is their response to, this is the root of their, the Reagan-esque fear of government. It's this odd daddy issue thing that they have. And maybe it's the concept of, the difference between a strict household and a hyper-strict household. a highly religious household versus a religious household, that they grow, the outliers of those groups which drive the pack are the people that have these kind of responses to authority. And, never mind the years of entertainment programming that we have had since, I would say, 1986, but obviously off and on throughout, but 86, 87, where any problem that's going on, any governmental intrigue movie, it's always somebody inside. It's not a threat they're dealing with. It's not Hunt for Red October. It's absolute power. It's clear and present danger. The president himself is directing death squads and all that kind of stuff. Everything is inside. Every spy movie has a mole. Everything there are Hydra being S.H.I.E.L.D. There's everything in these things that ultimately the biggest problem we have is that we can't trust our own government. That is, which by the way, is patently ridiculous. Because you do every day. No. You're in buildings that building codes were enforced in. You drive on roads that have traffic signals that are driven by coordinating, systems that were bought and paid for by your local and federal governments and through grants and all this other stuff. There are constant threats that are being picked up and put down by the FBI and the CIA, both here and overseas, that would result in your death, and you don't even know about them, and you don't even care to know about them. There are 18,000 police departments in the United States. People have there are over 1 billion police interactions a year between citizenry and cops. 1 billion. Traffic tickets to full-on no-knock warrants to arrests 1 billion times a year. And yet, it isn't that people don't trust their government or don't whatever. They live under the illusion that they don't trust their government. You operate all the time within rules, guidelines, and protections that you voted on that were carried out by your representative government over decades. Of course you trust your government. So much so that it's news when someone untrustworthy is busted.
Yep.
If we lived in a Russian-style oligarchy or a CCP control over the government, like everybody pretends, on the right especially, which is amazing right now. You listen to Newsmax or OAN, they're Radio Free Europe talking, from within a pirate underground radio station during Nazi Germany. It's absurd. It's absurd. Can we get to fixing the problem? That's why people were shocked this week when the infrastructure bill moved forward.
Yep.
We shouldn't be, but we are. And it was a crisscross between paranoid narrative on the outside, where we all just kind of expect that nothing works right. By the way, lots of bills have passed this year and things have been signed. And were last year that had nothing to do with the Trump, agenda or whatever that got passed and signed. And it didn't matter. It was normal stuff, perfunctory stuff. Happens all the time. You trust that part. It's the parts that you know about that you don't trust, and then even then you find out 6 months later, oh, that actually worked out. It happens all the time. And it creates this idea, and with the news being if it bleeds, it leads, that's the only news you're hearing about is when things are burning down, right?
Yep.
In a lot of ways. And I try, by being slightly comedic about all this kind of stuff, I'm trying to take a little bit of that edge off so you can see stuff clearly and not from this, sort of panic zone of things. But right now, you can get a really good look at what that fomented anti-government stance that's been implanted in people's minds for decades. Never trust the government. You can't trust the government. The government's left. MK Ultra, HARP, to Tuskegee Airmen, J. Edgar Hoover spying on MLK, that like all that stuff stacked up into. I think I saw a thing where The Recruit. Al Pacino was the guy who picked people who went to the CIA and then went rogue. Like how many action movies? It's a rogue CIA agent that's actually behind it all. So you mix those two together. Jade Helm, thank you, Bob, in the chat room. UN Agenda 21, right? Everything is so that stack all those together, and then you look at the Republican Party and you understand that's what that looks like. That's what that petri dish looks like. And those folks are trapped in their own paranoid delusion. And they are screaming at family members right now about not getting vaccinated because it's going to make you infertile, magnetic, and traceable. That the mask mandates that are happening in cities across the country are just so that the people who would normally wear masks don't catch the Delta variant and have a breakthrough, or bring it home to their family members who are too young or immunocompromised and can't get the vaccine. That's it.
Right.
That's why. It's not about saving the Republicans from themselves. It's not about saving the anti-vaxxers from themselves. It is absolutely a balanced, look, you can't save everybody approach, because these people are belligerently, their heels are dug in, and they desperately need to believe that Nazis run our government, that we are run by a Jewish form of Hydra run by George Soros. That's what honestly, that if you watch Newsmax and OAN and Right Side Broadcasting and Real America Voices and all that stuff, that's what you take away. That's what the deep state is. The deep state is their version of, it's more like if S.H.I.E.L.D. infiltrated Hydra, unfortunately. But you see what I mean? Like, because technically speaking, most of these people are like, I don't know, Hydra's got kind of a point. If you watch the Star Wars movies, it's really the Empire that's trying to help.
All those rebels. Yeah,
exactly. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.